This Unloved Again is about a problem that an enormous number of people have and no one understands. And I had it and I didn't understand it. And I decided I would look into myself and see what the real issues were, why a person would choose the wrong kind of person to love over and over again, not know it, or if they knew it, say, well, they love it, but then they didn't love it, they hated it, and then they fought with it, and they tried to change that person, and then they tried to change themselves to be more lovable, and it got worse and worse and worse until they broke up the relationship, and they walked away from it, and they said, thank God it's over, and they went out and found another one who was the same. Again, they didn't know it, they didn't recognize it, they just said, I'm deeply in love, this is the right person for me, this person is perfect, and then slowly the mist left their eyes, they started seeing the very same faults that they found unbearable, and the fighting began. It's also for people who do the opposite, who are initially loving and turn into unloving partners. And they also don't understand why they change or why the person they thought they loved becomes so unlovable to them. So I understood, even though we're all presumably adults, we're of an age to vote, or at any age at all, that this is not an adult choice, even though we think we are choosing, but this is coming from our deep past, that we are dominated by the part of ourselves that never healed in childhood, that the child is far stronger than the adult is, that it feels like this is our true choice when that part of us says, I love, I love, I love, I need, I want, or I hate, I hate, I hate. We think this is the truth, my true insight. Now I'm really in touch with who I am, and that's why I'm going to let this control my judgment. The adult is very shallow. It's not developed. It doesn't recognize repetition. It doesn't recognize that they've been there before and it's going to go the same way. The adult is just dragged along over and over again by the early childhood trauma that was never resolved. So this book is an attempt to show people in various stages of uncovering their true self, which is the adult. It's the adult that decides. It's not the child that wants or the internal parent that hates. The true self lives in the present. But it has to be developed. It's not, I would say discovering isn't quite the right word, it's to develop it. But there has to be a separation between the early self, the historical self, and the present adult self that chooses. Unloved Again has many people who are in various stages of getting to be able to love fully in the present to a person who loves them back. I was very happy that several people read it, said they cried a lot. That made me very happy, because I cried a lot when I wrote it, and I felt we were really in sync with each other. They said, oh, I cried here, I cried there, and then they told me their story, like the story about losing their earliest love object, the thing you love the most as a child is a replacement for the mother. For me, it was my doll, Effie, and a friend of mine told me he lost his teddy bear. They all were telling me about how they lost it was taken away from them when it shouldn't have been and left them without a connection to the mother. So these are very early stories of how the idea that love goes on, that love, you can trust love, that you can feel connected to love. When you take away the child's earliest first toy or love object, they learn you can't trust love, you can't hold on to love. So how these lessons, or the lack of them, or the bad lesson, then controls who they choose to love later. Like the one whose doll was taken away chooses lovers who are always running away. They can't be counted on. they don't make promises, they can't make commitments, so if they do, they lie. You would say, why would someone whose earliest experience was so terrible choose someone who's going to do it to them again? It's because they're trying to undo the past, which cannot be done. They're actually living in the past, even though they've grown. So Unloved Again has a lot of stories about people's where the break in developing a good tie occurred, and how that continues to dominate who they choose to love or how they choose to love them now. It shows you a way to move on out of the past. It gives you issues that you need to look at and things that you need to do. It's very interesting, like I've heard people speak about the 12-step program. It points out you are choosing from the same circle of friends who do the same have the same mistakes, who support you making the same mistake. Is how to stop making the same mistake and make new mistakes. As an adult, how do we learn anything? We make mistakes. We blunder. We try things out. We move towards things, then we like it, we do some more. We don't like it, we don't do more of it. That's the child that got suppressed. We all need to make lots and lots of mistakes, but not the old mistakes. We need to make new mistakes. So this is about how to start making the right kind of mistakes that will open your life up and make it more pleasurable and more interesting and less predictable. You will not know where you're going now, which is really such a wonderful experience, except very terrifying to the child part that was so badly hurt. Well, Trapped in the Mirror is my first book. It was about children of narcissistic parents in the search for self, in which the parents were so self-involved, so unable to see the child as a separate entity, as a separate person, and relate to them as an ongoing developmental person that is not like the parent, but more saw them either as just like themselves or as carrying the negative features that the parent didn't want to admit they had. And the child never grows into a full person who knows who they are, which only happens through trying things out and experimenting and feeling and expressing and supporting all kinds of research into becoming a person. So that book was all about arrested development of the child who now is an adult and how to develop a self, really, how to develop a sense of self. Unloved Again was the other issue, that you're an adult now and you're supposed to love and be loved, and yet you always have a disaster happening to you. Of course, it happens a lot to children of narcissistic parents because they don't have a sufficiently developed self. Who is doing the choosing? It's their child or the controlling parent that lives on inside the brain. That's actually choosing who you will love. And so that's why I even know a lot of psychologists say you can never change who you choose to love. You'll always love the same people that were your parents. And I really disagree with these people strongly. I think that the reason they say that is because they haven't done it. I always like to go to people who've already done what I want to learn, wherever it might be, because I see that they're speaking from experience, not from book knowledge. So like, when someone tells me you can never love any different kind, you know, if you were raised by a cockroach, you'll love a cockroach. That's the way it is. So yeah, well, they were raised by a cockroach, but that is not necessary, but it's a struggle. So this book is about the struggle to free yourself to love in the present people who are able to receive love and love you back. Oh yeah, no, because as a survivor, I'm a survivor, right? I have survived, and I love, and I've loved, and I've been loved, and it was like, whoa, you know, like, this is nothing like I knew before. This is real. Of course, you know, it was very interesting with my husband. I used to ask him, you know, maybe twice a day, you really love me? Yes, 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 right? The family I came from, they didn't do it. They didn't do it. So like, oh, you mean it's really possible? So this is a dream of possibility, of reality. can be done. You can find love. You can develop the part of you that will be loving and loved. And it's very hopeful, extremely hopeful. Yes. So, like I was saying, that I like to go to see someone who has accomplished what I want to accomplish. And for example, I like a doctor who's about 98 years old. I have one who has gone through all the hardships and is coming out ahead and is very healthy, and says to me, hey, I think you should eat cucumbers. I will eat cucumbers. I have the same experience with people who love. If they are loving and experience love, I experience the lesson that they are teaching. I think that we sometimes get caught up in our thinking, which isn't always very clear, rather than receiving the feeling that the person is sending. So that's one of the things of Unloved Again. A lot of people, they get involved with someone who talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk. And the love is hardly there, or rarely there, or given in a kind of conditional form that will soon vanish. Unloved Again is about noticing what is being sent your way and not going towards the old pattern of not receiving. In fact, it's really learning how to say no. Because I don't think you can say yes if you can't say no. If you have to say yes to everything, you cannot choose. It's the art of choice. And even if the other person would be disappointed if you say, no, it's not right for me, you don't have to say it in a horrible sort of way, that is not the reason for you not to say no. I mean, if you're very outer directed, you don't realize you have a right to make your own decisions, to make your own choices. It shouldn't all depend on what other people think of you or what that other person offers you. I mean, let's say they offer you a yacht, but you don't want to go on a boat. I get seasick looking at boats. So that would be not very appealing to me. Well, one of the things that I noticed when I got there was that the person that I loved supported what I was doing, supported what I was interested in, supported what I was trying to accomplish. They weren't trying to drag me into some other way of life that they might have enjoyed better. So that would be one thing, that the person really cares about who you're trying to become. And I think ideally, all our lives we should be becoming. I really don't think there's an age when one should stop becoming. Like some people stop becoming at 30, at 20, at 40. To me, that's like a little death knell. It's awful. I think you should always be becoming. So if someone loves you, they'll be excited about it. They will be applauding it. In fact, I remember this story I read, I think maybe the guy's name was Titchener. He went around the world in a sailboat. He went to Australia, and I think he started from California, but I'm not sure. It was very long. He even broke his wrist somewhere, and they had balloons in the air and fireworks and everything. They met him in Australia, one of the big bays. And he said, "What are you all doing here? What are you here for? I just felt like doing this thing." And then they asked his wife, "How could you let him do this? He could have died," which is true. She said, "Well, but he wanted to do it." I went, oh, love, right? Well, I wrote Unloved Again to give people hope that this can be accomplished and should be, yeah.